February 20th, 1945. 14:20 hours. Northern Sector, Iwo Jima. Staff Sergeant Robert Meza adjusted his periscope inside the cramped turret of M4A3 Sherman tank number 431, watching Japanese machine gun fire rake across the volcanic ash 200 yards ahead. His tank, one of only 8 M4A3R3 Flamethrower Shermans that had landed on Iwo Jima's black beaches the previous morning, looked identical to every other Sherman on the island. Olive drab paint, white star on the turret side, 35 tons of American steel and engineering. But where other Shermans mounted a 75mm main gun, Tank 431 carried something Japanese defenders had never encountered before: the POA-CWS-H1 Flamethrower system, designated Construction Battalion Hawaii Model 1 by the Navy Seabees who'd built it in secret at Schofield Barracks. A weapon that could project napalm-thickened fuel oil 400 feet at 300 pounds per square inch pressure, turning concrete bunkers into crematoriums in seconds. Meza had received his orders 30 minutes earlier from Lieutenant Colonel William Duplantis, commanding the 3rd Battalion, 21st Marines. 3 concrete pillboxes dominated the approach to Motoyama Airfield No. 1. 2 rifle companies had already been decimated attempting frontal assaults. The regiment had suffered 35% casualties in less than 48 hours. Conventional weapons weren't working. Naval bombardment had fired 22,000 shells onto Iwo Jima before the invasion. 74 consecutive days of bombing had dropped 6,800 tons of explosives. The Japanese positions remained intact, hidden in 11 miles of interconnected tunnels reaching 7 stories deep into volcanic rock. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi's 21,000 defenders had transformed 8 square miles of island into the most formidable defensive position in the Pacific War. The flamethrower tanks were the answer nobody had known they needed until Tarawa and Peleliu proved that conventional assault tactics couldn't reduce fortified positions without catastrophic casualties. Colonel George Unmacht's Chemical Warfare Service team in Hawaii had spent 5 months developing the weapon system that now sat in Meza's turret. Machinist Mate First Class A. Oraika and Electricians Mate Second Class Joseph Kissel, 2 Seabees whose names would never appear in headlines, had designed the CBH-1 by combining the best elements from 3 existing flamethrower systems: British Ronson units, Navy Mark I models, and captured German designs from North Africa. The result was revolutionary. Installation required 150 pounds of welding rod and 1,100 electrical connections per tank. Each conversion cost $20,000 to $25,000 in 1945 currency, equivalent to $360,000 today. The CBH-1 operated at 300 psi, triple the pressure of previous designs, giving it maximum range of 400 feet with thickened fuel. The system could maintain continuous fire for up to 80 seconds, though doctrine recommended 2 to 3 second bursts to conserve fuel and maintain accuracy. Inside Tank 431, Corporal Thomas Carlson peered through his gunner's periscope, tracking the nearest pillbox. The flamethrower replaced the Sherman's main gun, but used the same fire control systems. Full turret traverse of 270 degrees. Elevation from -10 to +35 degrees. Carlson could aim the flame weapon as accurately as a conventional cannon. Private First Class James Morrison sat in the driver's position, hands on the controls of the Ford GAA V8 engine, producing 500 horsepower. Assistant driver Private Robert Chen manned the Bow 30 caliber machine gun. Loader Corporal Anthony Vitelli monitored the fuel pressure gauges. 290 gallons of thickened fuel in the main tanks. 10 gallons of unthickened fuel for ignition. Compressed nitrogen in separate pressure tanks, chosen over compressed air because nitrogen wouldn't support combustion if the tank was hit. Every system had been designed with multiple safety features to prevent the catastrophic explosions that had plagued earlier flamethrower vehicles. At 125 yards from the target, Meza gave the order: gunner, flamethrower, pillbox, fire. The CBH-1 erupted with a sound witnesses described as the devil's own blowtorch. Napalm-thickened fuel oil arced through the air, propelled by compressed nitrogen at 300 psi. The burning liquid struck the pillbox aperture with devastating accuracy, splashing through the machine gun port and flowing inside like lava. Temperatures inside the concrete structure soared past 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit in seconds. Oxygen was consumed so rapidly that Japanese soldiers suffocated before flames reached them. Those who survived the initial blast attempted to flee through rear exits, only to be cut down by Marine riflemen positioned for exactly this eventuality. Misa traversed the turret 30 degrees and engaged the second pillbox. A Japanese 47mm anti-tank gun fired point-blank, the shell striking the Sherman's frontal armor and ricocheting skyward. The tank shuddered but continued advancing. Carlson triggered another burst, maintaining fire for 15 seconds until black smoke billowed from every aperture of the fortification. The third pillbox required different tactics. Its position behind rocky outcroppings prevented direct engagement. Misa ordered Morrison to advance within 80 yards, dangerously close to Japanese infantry positions. As the tank crested a small rise, Japanese soldiers emerged from spider holes, rushing forward with satchel charges and magnetic mines designed specifically for close-range tank attacks. The bow gunner opened fire with his .30 caliber machine gun, but several Japanese soldiers reached the tank's blind spot behind the turret. This was the moment the CB-H1's design proved its worth. Unlike standard flamethrower tanks that could only fire forward, the full traverse capability allowed Carlson to swing the turret 180 degrees and fire directly behind the tank. The attacking infantry were consumed by a blazing wall that witnesses said looked like the gates of hell opening. Japanese soldiers who'd been trained to sacrifice themselves in suicide attacks against American tanks discovered that getting close to a flamethrower Sherman meant instant incineration from any direction. With the third pillbox neutralized, Marines of the 21st Regiment advanced 400 yards in 2 hours, more progress than they'd made in the previous 2 days combined. Word spread rapidly through Marine communications networks. The flamethrower tanks worked. More importantly, they survived where conventional tanks failed. The M4A3's armor, ranging from 25 to 76 millimeters thickness, could withstand Japanese 47mm anti-tank guns that were standard equipment in defensive positions. Within 6 hours, all 8 flamethrower tanks were in action across the front lines. Tank number 434, supporting the 23rd Marines near the East Boat Basin, destroyed 4 fortified positions in a single afternoon. The crew developed a technique they called corkscrew and burn, approaching in a spiral pattern to avoid anti-tank fire while maintaining continuous flame suppression. The psychological effect was as devastating as the physical destruction. Japanese soldiers who'd been trained to die at their posts began fleeing positions when they saw flame tanks approaching, abandoning fortifications rather than face incineration. General Kuribayashi, observing from his command bunker deep beneath the northern plateau, issued emergency orders that night designating flame tanks as priority targets. All available 47mm anti-tank guns were to concentrate fire on these vehicles. Special assault teams were organized, volunteers who would attack with explosive charges strapped to their bodies. Infantry units were instructed to target the flame tank's vision blocks with concentrated rifle fire, hoping to blind the crews. But the fundamental problem remained insurmountable. The flamethrower tanks looked identical to regular Shermans until they fired. Japanese gunners couldn't identify priority targets until it was too late. The Americans had achieved tactical surprise through mechanical innovation, painting the modified tanks in standard Marine Corps olive drab with no special markings indicating their terrible purpose. By February 23rd, the same day Marines raised the flag on Mount Suribachi, the flamethrower tanks had consumed 70,000 gallons of fuel mixture and destroyed an estimated 300 fortified positions. Marine casualties in supported sectors had dropped 40% compared to unsupported attacks. Japanese defensive doctrine, refined over centuries and adapted through painful lessons at Tarawa, Saipan, and Peleliu, had no answer for weapons that turned solid concrete fortifications into crematoriums. the tunnels that were Japan's greatest strength, allowing defenders to survive naval bombardment and emerge to fight again, became death traps when napalm flowed like water through interconnected passages, seeking out every cave and chamber. The fuel logistics alone required extraordinary effort. Electricians Mate Second-Class Kissel, one of the original designers, had accompanied the tanks to Iwo Jima specifically to supervise maintenance under combat conditions. He reported that keeping the 8 tanks operational required a supply chain stretching back to Pearl Harbor. Fuel mixing stations on Iwo Jima operated 24 hours daily, combining diesel fuel, gasoline, and napalm powder in precise ratios developed by the 43rd Chemical Laboratory Company. The mixture had to be used within 72 hours, or it would separate and clog the flame guns. Special fuel trucks, each carrying 300-gallon trailers, moved continuously between beach supply dumps and forward positions, often under Japanese artillery fire. Daily consumption averaged 10,000 gallons, a logistical challenge that would have been impossible without the industrial capacity that characterized American military operations throughout the Pacific War. The Japanese response continued evolving. Tank killer teams were formed, volunteers who attacked with explosive charges. These human bombs achieved some successes. Tank number 438 was destroyed on March 11th when a Japanese soldier detonated himself against the vehicle's engine compartment, killing 3 of the 5 crew members. But such tactics were ultimately futile. For every flame tank damaged, Marine maintenance crews worked through the night to repair and return them to action. The 8 original M4A3R3 Flamethrower tanks, supplemented by 4 additional units rushed from Hawaii in late February, maintained continuous operations despite volcanic ash that chewed through track pins, napalm residue that clogged fuel lines, and Japanese anti-tank fire that required constant armor patch welding. On March 21st, during the final assault on the gorge, Kurabayashi's last stronghold, all operational flamethrower tanks concentrated for a coordinated attack. Tank number 431, bearing scars from multiple hits that had failed to penetrate, led the advance into a twisted maze of ravines where 3,000 Japanese defenders prepared their last stand. The assault consumed 8,000 gallons of fuel mixture in a single day, a record for the campaign. By sunset, over 800 Japanese defenders lay dead, many burned beyond recognition. The fortress that was supposed to make Iwo Jima's capture so costly that America would reconsider invading Japan had fallen to a combination of marine courage and industrial innovation embodied in 8 modified Sherman tanks built by Navy Seabees in a Hawaiian warehouse. The M4A3R3 POA-CWS-H1 Flamethrower Sherman had proven that modern warfare belonged to nations capable of marrying technological innovation to battlefield necessity, and that victory came not just from superior numbers or firepower, but from imagination applied to solving tactical problems that conventional weapons couldn't address.